Hi, my name is Claire Shipley, and this is my MakerSpace lesson plan. So, the title of my lesson is The Three Little Pigs, An Architectural Tale. And the question or problem is that in the book, The Three Little Pigs, An Architectural Tale, the three pigs show their creativity and design style when building houses of scraps, glass, stone, and concrete. So the question or problem for my kiddos is what kind of home can you create using cardboard? So that's a different building material than the pigs used. The recommended grade level is 3rd grade. The topic is architectural design. And then here are a list of all of the resources and materials that would be provided in my students' MakerSpace. Okay, moving down to our key vocabulary. So these are some words that we'll preview in our story and talk about. The words are scraps, smithereen, gnashed, greenhouse, orchard, concrete, scorching, and architectural. We have one essential question. It asks, how can we use alternative materials to build a stable, strong home? So stability and strength are vocabulary words that we've already discussed in science in our Bridges unit. So the kids are already familiar with those words. And then here are some of my differentiation techniques. So the first is to provide students with architectural design books for reference. Provide students with scaled drawing paper so that before they actually build their designs, they're able to sketch them out to scale. And then also allowing choice within student roles, so within their actual groupings. Okay, and moving down to the objectives. We have two different objectives. The first is explore how different building materials affect the stability and strength of a home. So students will be making these observations as they test their buildings. And the second objective is explore how different building materials compare in area by n unit squares. So they'll be exploring this when they make their scaled drawings. Some of the Common Core Standards alignment are primarily in math. The first is recognize area as an attribute of plane figures and understand concepts of area measurement. And the second, measure areas by counting unit squares. So as I said, by n unit squares. And then here are the mathematical practices that align to the lesson. You have mathematical practice 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, now going down to the actual lesson. So the overview of this lesson is that students will be designing and constructing a home using the given materials to test for stability and strength. Now an introduction and building background. So what do my students already know about these things? So students will have had experience building structures and testing them for stability and strength during our Bridges unit in science. So in science, the kids build bridges using a bunch of different materials and they test them for stability and strength. So students are already familiar with this process. Okay, now for the group activity. So day 1, the first thing we do is read the story, The Three Little Pigs, An Architectural Tale. Second thing we do is prior to going into the MakerSpace, we discuss rules regarding safety materials and tools. And then groups will have already been decided by the teacher beforehand, and there's 4 to 5 students per group. And once students are in their groups, they'll discuss and decide upon roles for each group member. And also depending on how many students there are in a group, some roles may need to overlap. So one student may need to have 2 roles. And here are all of the different roles for each group member. So first you have the facilitator. So that person is responsible for all members being heard and keeping the group on task. They also share final data to the teacher and the class. The material collector, so they're responsible for bringing materials to the group, seeking adult help when needed, also maybe collecting more materials if they need them. Timekeeper is responsible for keeping track of time and encourages the group to stay focused, letting them know how much time they have left. The note taker is responsible for recording group ideas, which is important on this first day specifically. The data collector keeps track of and records all data in terms of how many weights their buildings can hold. And then the builder will create the final building. This is specifically important on the last day. The last activity the students will complete on day 1 is they'll be given the opportunity to sketch their ideas using the provided scale drawing paper. And they'll also be able to browse through the provided architectural design books to gain some inspiration for their own design ideas. Okay, now moving into days 2 and 3 of this project. So on days 2 and 3, students will have time to build and test the strength and stability of their homes. Now it's important for groups to keep track of what materials and designs they're using and collect data on the results. It's important so then they can go back and figure out which materials and designs worked best for them and which ones may not have worked best. They also may wish to take pictures of each home they build to reference for their final building, so again they can kind of look back and see which homes they preferred and which ones they didn't. Now during this time, some key questions students should be considering and discussing amongst one another is, how can we make our home stronger? How can we make our home more stable? And what materials provide strength and stability that we've used? Okay, now after days 2 and 3, we have day 4. Now, on day 4, the data for each home that was tested is going to be discussed by the group. So they'll talk about their strength and stability of their test homes. After their discussion, the group must use this data to decide which home they'd like to build for their final building. So which of our homes is the strongest and most stable? And after a decision is made, groups must prepare reasoning for why they believe their home will be strong and stable, and they'll present this reasoning to the class. So they have to back up why they're building their specific home design. And then the last day is day 5. So on day 5, students will build their final home and they'll present it to the class. So in front of the class, groups will test their homes for stability and strength using the provided metal washers. So this is what we use as weights. So students will place weights on top of their homes, like on the roof, one at a time. And whichever groups can hold the most amount of weights before collapsing will be the group with the strongest and most stable home. Now, the ways in which I'm assessing my students isn't necessarily for stability and strength of their home. I'm more looking at their data recording showing that they have evidence for their choice in home design. I'm also going to be observing on days 1 through 5 on participation, and those are my 2 forms of assessment.